Alright, hey guys, we're back here. Another demonstration video that I'm going to do for Golf Clash here. And we're going to focus on Tour 11 this time. Again, you might see me usually fluctuate between Kingmaker and Katana for this tour. But you're going to see me use just Kingmakers because I only have 6 Katana balls. So I'm going to stick with the Kingmakers for these guides, but feel free to go down. I will recommend going down to Katanas as opposed to Titan. Having that little side spin boost, especially when using something like Thor's Hammer, is going to be highly effective. Now, I do really recommend Thor's Hammer for this tour because of about 2 or 3 holes. Backspin can really come in handy on a couple of these holes, and not having it can, really put yourself at a little bit of a disadvantage. But as far as playing through this tour, you want to go with your precision bag. Definitely have probably sniper on. If you have a maxed hammerhead or hammerhead 6, you can use that as well. I prefer using hammerhead, but I'll use sniper for my guides because maybe I have to, just to put out a better video that's more rounded for the bulk of the people from my channel. So what you'll usually see me do on this hole is lay up to avoid that rough. So how you saw my opponent hit it into the rough here, you'll see me play over to the left side, kind of like this. I'll play a little bit towards a max ring adjustment. This is going to be about 10 rings for me that I'm going to do here. So 10 rings, it's going to require just a touch of power. And then you'll see me just basically bring it back into the center of the fairway with curl. And you're never really going to see me approach the neck very aggressively. You're going to just see me play it up, lay it into the center of the fairway, and just be very methodical, safe. One of the things that you want to avoid doing is missing on that left-hand side like that. So there you can see the ball misses on the left, and you need a tailwind to get to the green. Now, the wind that my opponent got is basically pointed at the hole. So with a well-played shot, this will still get to the green. It's actually a very favorable wind because you're going to be able to get it over there rather easily as well. Because the wind's pointed at the hole, you can aim out more towards the left and use curl. So I wouldn't use as an aggressive a line as it appears could be setting up. You don't need to hit it there. You just need to land it there. So where my opponent was basically adjusting after one full target was probably where I would typically aim, use my curl, and get the ball back. Kind of like that. That's exact. So he ended up doing that anyway, which is an overplay, because where the original setup wasn't where the ball actually came in from. But, what I'll end up doing on this hole is usually just trying to find the fairway, a nice little, hopefully flat spot. Now keep in mind what I like to do in situations like this is I'll do an offset method wind adjustment. So you're going to see me intentionally keep the guide over to the side, and then you'll just see me play around 13 rings. You'll probably see me play 14 based on the fact that I'm into plus yardage. And there you see, caught my perfect ball. And the goal here is, when I put the guide out to the side there, is that it's going to work back naturally. Now, typically you can do that, but as you can see here, it did not pay off. There's nothing I did technically that is incorrect. It's more just about that fairway. I really hate playing that hole to the left, and that's pretty much the reason that I don't like to. Because I aim out to the left there, that ball should come back and I probably hit just a funny little hop, and it didn't. But nevertheless, we didn't need or expect that to go in anyway because of that fact. But that's one of the reasons that you'll see me use an offset method, is because I'm trying to get as precise as I can on my land zone. I don't want to do an overcorrection, because doing it with an overcorrection method is going to change your initial land zone. So what you'll see is I'll try to still hit that same land zone, and then just get, hopefully, the rest of the following hops to run out towards the hole. And here, you're going to see the way that I like to play this. I'll usually play this a little bit more towards min club here, and I'll usually play maybe about 6 bars of backspin as well. And you can see, based on my guide, that I'm going to need a little bit of curl to the right. You can see that I'm a little bit short there with where I need it to be. I might play this 1.3 per ring, maybe 6. No, I'll still go 7 rings. Still play it pretty spot on, 1 per ring. Like I said, I'm going to need just a little bit of extra curl, and that's the reason that you see me aiming off to the side there. And it didn't need that 7th ring. So it did only need 6. So you saw it didn't shoot up the hill, and that's why it's shooting to the right 4 yards. So something to be a little cautious of. But at the same time, the mistake I made is far less than had I carried it up onto the hill and not got it to come down towards the hole at all. Another thing you can do is you can play this with sniper. I kind of have mixed feelings about which way to go. I'm very good at both shots. I just did a little bit of an over adjustment here. I'm not used to Thor 7. This is my first time going through Tor 11 with Thor 7. So the accuracy now is completely changed, and I'm going to have to essentially just find my new ring adjustment. And you can see the way that I landed there was probably a yard or 2 short of where it needed to be. And that's solely why the mistake happened. And it's going to end up costing me the shootout. As you see, this comes in right towards the hole. I do like going the driver route, and I can usually get a very similar shot to that with a driver. The advantage to the driver over the sniper shot is the fact that it doesn't go as high into the wind. So as soon as I get that ring adjustment down, it's just going to be a sniper shot. It's just going to be all over the pin every time that I play it. But as you can see, you can still do it with a sniper. It does help to be downwind for the sniper. That's kind of a better wind when you get a side wind like that. And, it's just going to come down to ring adjustment. I know the way that I usually play my Apocalypse, but I also know the way that I usually play Thor's Hammer, but Thor's Hammer 6 is 64 accuracy, and Thor's Hammer 7 is 92 accuracy. So 28 difference in accuracy, and that can be the difference between, in this case, as to, it might take me a couple trial runs to really learn the driver shootouts on this tour. And what I'll usually do, especially on tailwinds, is I'll try to get this down to hopefully short iron range. It's going to be a little bit harder to get the short iron range with a Thor's Hammer. I'll usually go down to short iron range with an Apocalypse, especially in Apoc 6. Sometimes you'll see me do a hook shot here, and I'll hook it over into where I just put the ball. But the way that this hole is going to play is I'm going to be very close to maybe being far enough, maybe not. It's hard to say whether or not I just drove that far enough. So, in terms of what driver you should be using for this tour, until a pot gets to a 6, that's the point where I use Apocalypse exclusively on this tour. The only reason I'm using Thor here is to just kind of mess around with something different. There's plenty of streams, I'm sure, where I'm using a POC 6 and POC 7 that you can find. There's exactly 0 streams of me using Thor 7, so I'm going to mess around with that a little bit. Now what I usually do, you can see I'm right at max here, for these short irons, is you'll see me do an overcorrection method. So normal wind is 1.5 per ring. You're going to see me go 7 rings here. So with a 7 ring adjustment, what is that? Just coming up short. So I either short hit that or didn't quite put the third hop right on the hole enough. But 7 rings was about perfect there. So you saw on the first hole I tried to do an offset method into the green, and here I did a overcorrection method. So with the overcorrection method, my usual wind play there should have been 5 1/4 rings. Almost pretty spot on. Between 5 1/4 5 1/2 rings would have been a spot on correction. And yet I went 7 rings at max club. And what that overcorrection did, basically got the ball going right towards the hole. So I went an extra ring and a half there. So just something to keep in mind as you will get much more honed in keeping these kind of techniques in mind. I really should have had that. I feel like if I didn't have to rush the time there, and if I wasn't on stream, I would have been a little bit more precise with my power or the methodology that I went about setting that up, because there's no reason that should have stopped. So I did something wrong, but I'm just not really sure exactly what it is because I had to rush. I'd have to go back and watch it. But in terms of aim-wise, it was going right at the hole. And here you're seeing Milano hole. So what I always do for this is I always use an offset method when I go about playing my wind on this hole. You can't really do an overcorrection method. There's certain times where I see guys get away with an overcorrection, certain winds. This isn't one of them. So you could never overcorrect on this wind because it's into the wind. So you have to play less on the wind. You have to play your wind less and basically use your guide, your ball guide, to help you get in here tight. So there you're seeing it shoot out to the side. So just like I just mentioned, I'm going to use my ball guide. I'm going to set it up long and to the right intentionally to basically play this shot. And then I'll play my rings essentially straight up. So here you're going to see me set my ball guide just a hair to the right of the hole, kind of like this, and a hair bit long, kind of like this. Aside from that, we are going to go normal ring play. So about 5 backspin is what I'm using here. And we're just going to focus on, very close to 9.6 rings. And I did catch a great ball. I don't think it's going to make or break my shot in this case. We'll see. It is checking up quite a bit. It's going to be a little closer than it should have. I should have had this. And now I made it a little bit closer because it shot out to the left a bit. But I did just sneak that up on the front edge. As you can see, once you get to close to 10 rings there, it gets a little iffy with where I was with the positioning. So it was hard to see if I was going 9.5 rings, and so it even came up a bit short. It did shoot out a little bit to the right, to the left a little bit more than I wanted, but it also came up a little bit short. And it could have been, you can see that the way that the elevation of that bunker kind of changes, and it kind of dips down and then goes back up. So sometimes you'll see me play 5 rings, rotate my screen quick, and then so I can precisely get to that 10, 9.6, 10 ring mark. You'll see me adjust it from the other direction, the other camera view, more pushing up instead of pulling down, because what you saw me do in video was pull straight down on the screen. But at the very least, just play around with your ball guide, play around with your side spin. It's another great reason to have, katanas or, you really don't need ever more than 4 side spin there for most cases anyway. So technically you could get away with a Titan there. But, in terms of a distance ball, you really don't need Titan for distance. So here, let's talk about this. So the way that I usually try to play this one is I try to, since the rough is bigger, I'll try to use this left-hand side and spin it through. Now, what I need to keep in mind, so my wind's only a 7, I got to try to visualize, make sure probably about 10 rings down is still going to land in the rough. And that helps me set my power because I know that the ball's probably going to land very close to 10 rings down. I play this very close to, I've been playing it very close to 0.7 per ring. But I'm going to come in just a little bit, kind of like this. And notice how I'm kind of intentionally aiming to the left in hopes that I can basically edge this rough over here, kind of like that, and get it to slow down. So it's in the fairway as opposed to the back rough or bunker. So you're seeing me aim to the left where there's a little bit more fairway. Where there's a little bit more of that, the fairway shielded from, catching my second bounce. So you can see over there towards the bushes and trees, if I land left and spin it back to the, now I don't always do that shot like that, but when I have a wind that makes it favorable, that I can get over there easily, that's the way that you'll see me play it. If I don't have a wind that's favorable, or, for example, I don't know what that just was. If I had that guy's win, for example, or an extra mile or whatever, if my top spin is down, then I do not go for that shot. You can only go for that shot if you have a POC 6 spin or higher. So next you'll see me just position this barely outside the cup and bring it back. It'd be about a 3 to 4 ring adjustment in terms of if you were counting rings. But at the very least, you can use the guide and you can see, well, if it's just on the outside and the wind pushes it back, you know that it's going to be more centered. It's not going to play very much at quarter club there, so. And something to think about when you're in Tour 11, this is the one tour where you'll match anybody. You can match somebody with 5,000, 4,000. Whoever's playing, you can match. So you'll play, there's getting quite a bit more maxed out players. So you're going to see a lot of times where you actually match these guys. Because there's getting more and more maxed accounts. There's probably a good 1,000 some accounts now that are right around just the max number, within 100 or so of the number. So at all times you can find essentially anybody that you could end up matching. Let's see what I got in terms of chess here. That's pretty good. I'm not going to gem anything. I only have 2,000 gems, so especially with as advanced as my clubs are, it's just not beneficial. But here you can see, the person you match, it's just kind of all over the place. So what have I played 3 guys that are right around 5,000 straight in a row, except for that one. So it just kind of goes to show you that's the way you're going to match. This is the only tour that's like that. So here, very similar to what I mentioned, I'll probably play this maybe like 0.8 per ring. So for instance, if I go 10 rings here, that's essentially pretty much spot on. That's an overplay, but it's because we're going max overpower plus shooting to a downhill elevation. If you're not playing Thor's hammer, you would want to come in on that value as well. Well, if you're not playing Thor 7. You want to think of it in terms of how much am I overplaying. If my usual ring play is 1.1, for instance, then I'm playing about a 25-30% extra win play. So that's the key. That's what you need to know. It's not based on, you'll see I can come out here, I could even bring extra mile if I absolutely had to, and I could still hit fairways based on my ring adjustments because of the fact that, even though I never play the club, I just use that max, 25, 30% additional to max as kind of my guideline for what I'm going to do here. And it just comes from practice. It also comes from, screwing up. You do it wrong enough, and then you're like, oh, well, I missed by 2 rings, for instance. So you'll know that you were off by 2 rings and say, oh, well, I can just change my ring adjustment for next time. That's an extra 10%, for example. So that's how I go about discovering values. And I would recommend you guys, finding value similarly. Here you can see I'm very close to min club, which I usually play at 1.2 per ring. Since I'm pulling towards max club, I am going to cheat that ring play up a little bit, and I'm going to play more rings than that. I'm going to probably play it a little bit closer to 1 per ring. And you'll see me just go, and this is also, by the way, this is an overcorrection method that I'm using here. Sometimes I do that with this hill, and as you can see, it's still not quite enough. So I went 10 rings there. You could see that, if my ring play was, say, 1.3, for instance, in that case, for my ring adjustment. Well, going 10 rings, I'm accounting for 13 miles per hour. So I went I over adjusted by 3 or so miles per hour. And you can see it was just short from being enough as well. So if I would have went 1 more ring, that probably would have put that right on the cup. So let's see what shootout they give us. And I'll walk you guys through another setup here. And depending on, what the hole is and the wind is, kind of dictates my shot sometimes. You have to have multiple setups for all these shots because you never know if it's going to be a headwind. You never know if it's going to be a tailwind. The only thing that I, virtually recommend is if you get a tailwind and you like a certain shot, I would just say, stick with it. Of course, we're going to get Milano again. At least they gave us a different wind. But I have this hole so covered on my channel. It's just kind of wasteful to have this time and time again because it's covered in 4 tours. So if I have this covered in 4 tours, why do I need to keep seeing it? And with this wind, I might also do this method. It is very accurate to get it close. But it's also a very skillful shot, especially once you aim over the fairway, kind of how you see my opponent doing. But it does play very close to 1 per ring as well. So we'll see. One of the things that I would recommend is rotating your screen the other way from the other direction from what you saw my opponent just do there. It would be very tough to beat my opponent. Sometimes you have to play your opponent, and it would be very tough for me to beat him had I not set up to go this way. So something to keep in mind when you're playing is if you're not kind of playing your opponent, you really should be. So what you're going to see me do here is I'll set up to play the 1.1 or the 1.0 per ring, and I'll play 12.5 rings very precisely. Might just put just a tiny bit of touch of curl as well. because I do feel that, even with how much, it looks like my pull angle was completely messed up. So that comes in when you can't tell if you have a headwind or a tailwind, and you can see I messed it up, and because of that, I lost the match. So kind of disappointing. You do have to be careful. Knowing whether it's a tailwind or a headwind is kind of the key. Now, I kind of got shafted there a little bit because obviously it was a tailwind, because that was way over, and I didn't know that. My opponent shot, when I saw his arrow, it was almost an obvious headwind to me. So I played mine like a headwind, and then you could see that I had way too much extra carry. But, with that being said, that shot can be perfected, and, you can pull that off and get it. With my opponent in there a yard, it was going to be hard on a mega side wind like that to beat that using the island. So you really, if your opponent does that and pulls it off, then you kind of need to follow suit. And, more than anything, I just kind of got the shaft on that wind there because it was an obvious tailwind. So you can see that the pull angle that I used was wrong. And if you've ever seen the way that I play, with the way that I usually play my tailwinds, for instance, I'll pull slightly south back towards the tee on my wind play purposely. And if I have a headwind, then I'll play it a little bit north towards the pin on my ring pull, because the ball tends to land a little bit shorter. I've noticed that it lands short if you just play it as a side wind. So that's the reason, or to play long, for instance, on a tailwind. So because of that fact, you'll see me intentionally usually angle my wind just slightly. And in the cases where I can't tell, like in that one, obviously, probably would have been best to just pull at an exact pull angle there. But that just goes to show you the risk factor as well, as to if you, go for that shot. But like I said, with your opponent in their yard, your hand is forced to essentially go for a precision shot. If I didn't go for that shot, it was also, it didn't look like a very good shootout for me, but that was, basically like a 5% situation where that would even happen. It was basically just an absolute luck wind where I couldn't tell if it was a side wind or a tailwind. So how many degrees does that happen? There's only a very few shootouts where that could even possibly happen. So what I do here is, always just beat it up here as far as possible, get it up to short iron range, and we'll be going at a short iron shot. So similar type thing. On most short iron cases, you're going to see me do a overcorrection method. Pretty much, I'm always going to use an overcorrection method. The only thing I might do is I might just kind of put my ball guide on the edge of the cup, just to kind of, help facilitate. So in this case, since it's left to right to left wind, I might put it right on the right edge before I make my adjustment. But, technically not even necessary, because of the whole fact that, to make it, you're going to have to get the ring play right anyway. So really doesn't even matter if you do that. Here you can see we're going to be very close to mid-club, 2.25. I'm going to play at 2.20 because I'm pulling towards max, though. So if my usual ring play is 2.0 per ring, I need to do an overplay here on that wind. So 5.5 rings would be usual, but I'm going to need to go at least, minimum 6 rings. You're even going to see me go 6.5 here. And there you can see that it still shoots over to the left, so I needed to go just a little bit more than 6.5. So it's all about just kind of honing in on that and figuring out how much of an overcorrection to do. Because as you can see there, I didn't quite do enough. So back to this hole. Now that we've already seen one vantage point from this hole. Now keep in mind, when we have a headwind, we're going to play a completely different spin. So here you're going to see me play more like a 4 spin, kind of like this. And keep in mind that where I set up might be pointed kind of straight down the hill, kind of like this. And I'll play much more like max club adjustment here. So with my max adjustment, I would expect to play, at least I would say 12 rings there. And notice how I don't use the curl here because it's not going to need it. I kind of got just too high on the hill, so now you're seeing it go outside to this side. So 2 really bad break. That one was kind of a bad break. I mean, that was a fractional half yard too high from coming right down at the cup. It was just 1/2 yard too high. And you saw it just hang up there on the top of the hill for just a split second, and which caused it to go 3 yards out to the right. So all in all, just a bad break more than anything. And this hole can be a game of fraction of inches. So had I gone 1 extra yard less, it would have been right on the cup. So it just goes to show you how touchy this can be. You can hit it perfect. You can go too much. Here we're going to see a great ball to the left. And let's see. He aimed a little bit too left there. It's not going to quite take the hill and shoot down. So it's going to be very similar with that great ball to what you just saw me do last time. So it's going to be about 4 yards to the left out there, 4.5. So you can see that this hole can be very touchy, very, very touchy. I'm hoping with the Thor 7, especially once I start to get a feel for how many rings to go, it's going to make that a little bit easier. And we're going to have far fewer mistakes. But until I can get the hang of actually understanding the values that I need to go, it might just take a little bit. If it was my Apoc 7, I would be playing at 1.3 per ring. With this one, I'm playing at 1.1. So I need to keep that in mind that I have to go extra rings. But you also have to keep in mind that, the wind effects of what that causes. So you're not seeing me play 1.1 per ring. You're seeing me overplay that. You're seeing me go more rings than that. Because of the compression factor of my shot guide. So I'm using an overcorrection method by about a ring. Maybe 2 rings. So just something for you to keep in mind when you're working through these holes. And you can see that this tour can just be kind of an up, it's a very streaky tour. There'll be times where I can go on, a 12-game streak like it's nothing, but then, play for an hour and break even. So you just got to ride through. The biggest thing is eliminating. So the one thing that I usually never have is like a 4-game slide. And that's the key, is to just kind of keep it to where you're at least, not getting in those negatives. If I can, think of it this way. If I play for an hour here and, the luck just quite isn't going my way and I'm 50-50, let's say I played for an hour and I'm 6-6. I can just as easily go 10 straight right after that. So then I'm 16 and 6. So as long as I keep those slides out, then I'm good. So getting over to the left is something that I like to do here. It's going to be very tough with Thor's hammer. Probably can be done. Probably needs a hook to do it. So why don't I'll try to set it up, and I'll start this slice. I'm kind of using the right of my bullseye as my target line, and I'm going to go an extra ring from that and an extra 5 rings, say. So 25 total, like 2.5 total bullseyes, but I'm only going 20 rings here. And it's really going to need a lot of that hook to miss this bunker. And my shot is very similar to my opponent's, how it just skips it. But I have a little bit more top spin than my opponent, so you're seeing it out from beyond the trees. And you can see I was being a little careful. I've never tried a hook shot with Thor 7. So for my very first effort, I overplayed it by, I had half a target. I didn't have to do 5, that last 5 rings that I didn't have to do. But I wanted to be sure, even if I missed in that bunker, I didn't care. Like, at least I'd know for next time, oh, well, you went 25 last time. You went 2.5 full targets. You only need to go 2 full targets. So I would only need to, stack that 1 additional from that initial aim spot. And I would have been good to go. So what I do on this hole is I usually use an offset method, and it usually has to do with having a lot of side winds. So you'll probably see me use some kind of offset curl shot. So I'll keep my guide a little bit to the short. Now what this will do is it'll allow me to stay on the high elevation. So I never want to bring that target down into that bunker unless I absolutely have to, because it's going to change my guide just too much. So I am a little bit towards mid club, so you're going to see me do more of a min club. Oh geez. So I'm going to need a short hit curl just slightly. That was not the best setup I could have done. I had to totally wing that a little bit. Hopefully you guys can keep up with kind of what I did there. You guys saw that I had the guide pointed out to the right because I didn't want to go down to that lower target. I did not think that I was quite at min club. I played it more of a mid club adjustment, and it was right at min club. So that's why you're kind of seeing it be an overcorrection, because I still went the 6 rings and was running out of time. I knew I was going to have to short hit it because you could see by the pull angle that I needed to get it shorter. So you saw me try to set a ring or 2 less of power based on that pull angle and being at B52 range. I didn't want to hit a B52 there. I should have just originally set up for one, but I didn't realize it was going to be at min club like that. So the typical shot that I play on wins like this is exactly how you see my opponent doing this. Just a touch of backspin. I don't usually use quite that much, and I usually go for this shot. Now, in terms of where my opponent's setting up, for a shot like this, you need to be about 15 rings short. The wind overplays here. So, for instance, if my opponent only goes 11 rings, it's not going to be enough. In fact, this is going to be cutting it close. If he great balls it to the left, which he did, that's going to actually end up helping his shot, just to be on the safe side. But you can see just a tad bit too much backspin. But since my opponent, for the most part pulled that off, I'm not gonna shot copy, because you get to see that method, and that is the way that I typically play it as well. What you're gonna see me do, I'm going to just use this driver shot, and we're going to go off the front of the green and off the hill, kind of like this. So one thing, I'll keep the guide intentionally short. And usually I play mid-club on my adjustment. I might come in on mid-club just a tiny bit here. So I'm thinking 8-ish rings maybe. Perfect ball. And it looks like I just squeaked that one out, but you got to see two different methods there. Like I mentioned, the only thing that I would correct from my opponent's shot was I would have used less backspin, just slightly. And you can see he came up 3 yards short. He probably would have had me otherwise. It would have been really hard. It looks like I need to go about one more ring than that as well. Oh, forgot we're not doing that tour. So, you know, something for you guys to keep in mind is when you're playing that driver shot, you know, especially if you're using, you know, you don't need to do what I did, which was, you know, the same amount of rings as me. It's more about using if I'm going mid club with my adjustment, just make sure you're going mid club with your adjustment. And ideally, you would have only on that wind played it with Thor 6 or 7. Otherwise, you would just do, you know, I really like, especially when the wind's pointed that direction. You'll see some good times guys will just go straight at the hole with some left curl and play it that way. That wind is a little bit harder to do it. I'd rather ride the wind like my opponent just did there. And you can see that, you know, with just a tad bit less backspin, that would have shot right towards the hole. But you got to make sure you're doing a little bit of extra adjustment on that sniper shot as well. I typically use maybe about 30% extra wind. I'm not sure why this guy's calling himself a turd, but okay. So this is typically a case where I might pull out a Titan ball. It's a little bit harder to do that with a, you know, you guys have those new roulette balls. So maybe this is time for me to maybe use a snowball. So what this will allow me to do is assure that I can get it up there to the, if I pull out this ball, I can basically assure myself that I can get it up to that pitch distance, a short iron. So that's, you know, the main reason that you would see me do this is for that benefit. So just make sure that I can blast it down here, get it way down here, and still maintain that pitch. Keep in mind that I use snowman, roulette ball. I could have still did it with a Kingmaker. I just wanted to ensure, I just wanted to ensure that I got it down there to the next club. So definitely, you know, keep that in mind for you guys as well. I do recommend you guys save, you know, a lot of the special balls that you buy. You don't need them to win in this tour. So, you know, you didn't need to do what I just did. I just did it because I don't care. Doesn't matter if I win or lose. I have nothing to play for. So with that being said, you know, I'm going to just do the shot and show you guys, just so you know, that getting up here and getting it to the next thorn. As you can see, my opponent did just stay in thorn. I don't think he played enough for wind. Probably really should have been using the, you know, the short iron, because here you're going to see it probably stop short. So, but with my ball, no matter what the wind is, and that's the reason that I did this, I'll still be at short iron territory. I cannot stand people that just use the emojis on repeat. So we are going to play this very much towards max here. And I'm going to come off that backspin a little bit this time. So if you see where I'm at about 2.5 this time. It's because I'm straight tailwind. Keep in mind, when I play this wind, I'm going to adjust more for, say, maybe even 15 miles per hour. I'm going to go, instead of my normal, I'm going to go 10 rings here. instead of my usual, which would be 8 rings. Set 7.5 rings. So let's see if I can get 10 to the hole. Yep. Stops right on the lip, of course. So that's 2 in a row that I got completely robbed on this hole. Should have had both of those. And that's the main reason that you do see me force the issue a little bit, because I can win the hole outright. And I have the confidence to be able to do that because my short iron game's so good. It's even better when I get to min club. And hopefully you guys start to understand these corrections and understand what you need to do and the way that the wind affects the ball, and you're doing these overcorrections as well and being precise and getting your game to that level as well. So back to this hole. Now anything that's not a tailwind, let's say it was a side wind. Here is the case of actual side wind. I would just, especially in this case, I'm just going to go at it with the driver route. I might, as you can see, I'm going to come off the driver just a touch in terms of backspin. So you're going to see me use a little bit more of the hail, kind of like this. And just keep it a tiny bit short. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind is you need to undercorrect when you pull into this bunker. So we do need to undercorrect the wind. So you're only going to see me go 8 rings in this case. And I'm letting the side spin of my ball bring it back into the center here. So you notice how I was not curling it. In fact, that's just, it's okay. It's about as far as I was last time. But you can see that I didn't use the curl to make that ball get over there. I knew it was just going to be the wind that would bring it over to there. And additionally, this would be easier with a driver. Definitely not extra mile, but this wind is favorable for extra mile. So this guy does still have a chance. This is a very favorable wind for extra mile. The only thing he's missing, a katana ball makes this a world easier. So that's one of the biggest reasons to bring Kingmaker as opposed to Royal. That there was nothing necessary that he needed to bring Royal Ball to the hole, for example. So doing that gave the guy less of that spin. And here you're seeing it hit the green and just take off. Little bad break. It happens from time to time. You got to hopefully hit the upslope instead of the downslope when you get on the other side. And just kind of a bad luck for that guy right there. But all in all, you can see a lot of emojis there. I just kind of wish that we could turn them off. If I'm playing somebody that's just going to use a lot of emojis, it's just going to kind of frustrate me a little bit. So here, when you get straight into the wind, for example, you can already be thinking, well, this is going to essentially turn into a layup hole. Now, I do recommend going over to this side, but you probably shouldn't do it with a Titan ball. Again, the same type thing. And there you're seeing it just hit the he might not have even got to that other fairway. So it might not have made it. It would have been very, very close. So what you'll usually see me do in this situation, well, first off, bring your Kingmaker. But more importantly, what you'll see me do, as opposed to going over there, because I don't want it to come a yard or two short, you'll just see me play the left side here aggressively. And what this does is it still gives me the option to go back to the left if I want, or it gives me the option to go right as well. So I have 2 options when I play it over to the side here. And here you can see wind straight in the face. The option of choice is going to be to just beat it down there as far as possible, and you'll still be able to get onto the green. The only problem with this shot is when you go for this shot and just put it up there, it's going to make the eagle virtually impossible. It's still doable, but almost impossible. Whereas, when you can angle it off to the side and hopefully get to where I can get it to, hopefully we can maybe give it a good run and potentially make the eagle still. So what you'll usually see me do is go back over to this side. A lot of times I'll do it with even a full slice shot, and that's probably what you'll see me do here, is I'll just go at this full, use this as my land zone with straight topspin, and I'll just go I'll go 4 targets from this spot right here. So that's 1 extra, 2 extra, 3 extra. Aside from that, I'll go landscape just for that little bit of extra right push. And then I'll just beat this max. And yeah, it's a little bit too much of an overcorrection. When I go into the wind, I always sometimes squeak that out to the left here. I do want to keep it to the left. So, I do favor getting it over there. And I favor the left side a little bit too much. But the thing, dependent upon the wind angle, is, that curl that I'm doing into a headwind keeps resisting the wind instead of actually making that full 4 hooks. And so I'm almost off by an entire target's worth of hook. So just something for you guys to think about if you're going to do that hook shot. Into a tailwind, it doesn't play like a side wind or down in... and I feel like every time that I get that there, I do always overcorrect it just slightly because I don't want to, underplay it and cut my angle off. So you do usually see me overplay it on purpose just to give myself a better angle into the green. And still from the rough here, I can still make this. So that's one of the nice things about playing it this way. So there you can see max club. Here you can see mid club, and we're going to set up to hopefully play it very close to mid club. And, instead of using an overcorrection method, you're going to see me kind of offset my guide. So here you're going to see me dip it down into the bunker, and I'm just going to be very careful with my land zone. So at 3.6 per ring, we're talking 4 rings. And if anything, I'm going to be a little I'll cheat it a little bit short so it doesn't roll into the sand. This is more of an offset method. Just keep that in mind. And there you see, I still caught my perfect ball. Should shoot up there towards the pin. And it looks like just a little too much of an overcorrection. You can see that it was about to take the guide towards the hole. But the good thing, it doesn't roll into the sand. As long as you keep perfect ball or miss to the left, you'll still be good, even if you get a little aggressive. So you're always going to see me aggressive because, I don't need to win. So, if you wanted to play that a little casually compared to what I just did, you could do that same thing and say, oh, I'm only going to go 3 rings, and it'll be plenty safe. Notice how when I'm setting up a rough shot, I was basically setting up my my spin and ball guide based off of mid club. So I basically set up to mid club on purpose, and then just use like 3.6 as my half club adjustment. So that's also a nice, good strategy. If you can keep yourself on round numbers, it will be advantageous for you to do so. So here we're getting sunshine glades. Looks like a left to right wind. Well, no, headwind. So with the headwind case, the typical way to play this hole is with backspin with a driver. Get a bit aggressive here on my guide. So you might see me set up, and this is going to be more of a offset method here. So you're going to see me set up just a little bit long, sending it down the hill, or so it appears that it's going down the hill. Aside from that, using mid club as your adjustment is going to be, more or less where you need. There I'm going to go about 8 rings. It does look like I just got a little short. I might have not quite went 8 full. Might have just been a little bit light there. I was getting a little tight on time, and I think I might have rushed it. But, keeping it a little on the short side is sometimes the more safe route to go. And you'll usually see me do a little bit more of a undercorrection as opposed to doing an overcorrection. But this is one of the biggest holes as to why we use now, if you're going to do this bunker approach, the one thing that I would suggest, this should have left spin instead of right spin. Why would you set, so it's a crosswind, and it's going to come in more right of that ball guide, so you would set up for maybe top spin. I usually use with a Pock 7 about 1.5 per ring, and might come in a little bit on that. When I push towards max, so there you see it doesn't spin out because he didn't go enough rings. So the thing that you want to keep in mind when you're doing that, when you're pulling towards max club, is when you're pulling towards max club there, you want to go over adjust more rings. So I usually, on a side wind, for example, I'll use my mid club adjustment. So whatever that is, if you wanted to do that top spin shot, you would need a Pock 6 or 7. You would need Thor 6 or 7. And you could do it with a mid club adjustment. However, when you're pulling towards max, you have to play almost a max club adjustment. So in that case, you need to use 1.3 as your adjustment, maybe even 1.2 per ring. You need to come in on that adjustment a bit. So if I usually play it, 1.5, then it would need to change to 1.2-ish. I would need to go, I forget what that wind was, but let's just say, hypothetically it was a 10. I would go at least 8 rings, probably 9 though. I would probably go 9, 1.2 per ring. Somewhere in there, 1.1, 1.2, just to be on the safe side. But keep in mind that you can splat it into the bunker by hitting it too close to the north edge, and it'll hit that face as well. So, quite a few ways to mess that up if you go for that shot. The way that I played it, a little bit more safe. Plus, not to mention, if you don't have the clubs to do that shot, you really, it's really a 4 club shot. You either have to have Thor 6 or 7, a Pock 6 or 7 to even execute that one. But one of the reasons that I suggest you guys playing with Thor's hammer instead of early epochs, a Pock 4 or Pock 5, is because of that hole. So you need that 6 backspin shot that I played there got me through that tour. As soon as that first came into tour 11, that's what helped got me over the hump. Is having a 6 backspin driver to get through it. You really need that 6.5 bars. And you can see you're just going to play it based on the wind. If you, for instance, you saw what I did with my offset method. I kept the guide long and to the left intentionally, and I didn't curl it because I knew that the wind was just going to bring it towards the hole. So keep that in mind when you're doing your wind plays. So here you're just going to see me lay up here. And the way that I usually go about doing this is curling away from the water. So you're just going to see me curl away, spin away, and just basically play it out into the center. Everything feeds towards the water here on this fairway. So there's no point in getting too aggressive to that right side. Now granted, if you have, your Nirvana 8s, most wind cases you'll still be okay, can still reach the green. But look what wind we just got, and it would have basically meant that I had to hold it out from short of the bunker with a short iron pitch. So what I usually do here, you saw me go over the river on the one attempt we played it. Now we played it where we have a layup, and what I usually do is I'll do more of an offset method. I'm not saying that I necessarily can for every time I play it, but that's usually the way that you'll see me do it. Now in this case, you know, in terms of setting up an offset, you just want to make sure that your guide is well to the hole. So, you know, I have a feeling that this is going well through the hole the way that it is. And I might just shoot it just a little bit to the left of the target line because the wind is pointed maybe just slightly to the right. But aside from that, you will see me play relatively spot up wind play here. 8.5 rings here. Perfect ball. See if I can't get this to stay on its line. Looks like it's coming up a little bit short and to the right. It's very hard to groove that where you need it to go. You can see the slope on the green. Very, very touchy, very hard shot to make. It's all about just basically getting your birdie in tour 11 and moving on for the most part. There's a few opportunities that you do get. Some of the par 5s, you know, all the par 5s are hard to get. So if you get the par 5s, you can win holes outright. And you've even seen just in this, from this stream alone, I have had 2 easy albatross chances where I could have won outright that just stopped on the front edge of the cup. So, you know, those are the chances that you can take advantage of and really put yourself in a good spot in tour 11 if you can get them to drop. And here we're getting this hole again, so let's see what we get in terms of a wind. But just keep in mind, you know, the things that you've done. So here we have another tailwind. Now we can make a tailwind revision. And hopefully, you know, this is the second time I've seen this wind now. It's almost spot on. I'm trying to think of what I did. I think I went almost almost max wind adjustment exactly. And I'm going to make sure this time that I don't quite go as many rings this time. I think I might have went 7 rings for an 8, for example. But, you know, it's all there in the video for you guys. And if you see me make a mistake, you know, you can learn, especially if you want to make notes about things. Because, you know, that's the best way to remember. So here we're seeing very similar type wind, but it is a little bit more angled this time around. But my approach is going to be very similar, right around 6 bars of backspin. And you can see how I try to get it relatively high on the hill. Keep in mind, the wind's pointed to the left, so I'm going to need quite a bit of curl. Now this time, instead of what I did last time, I'm only going to go 5.5 rings this time. So 5.5 right there. And aside from that, we're going to just work on getting the correct amount of curl and getting this to feed down towards the cup. You can see that's a much better land zone, and this time it's shooting much better on the slope, and it's shooting right down towards the cup. The only thing, it just got a little too high on the hill. That's it. So, you know, that's something that, you know, you can work on, especially with some trials. You know, keep in mind, you know, that wind angle, how it's, you could see that if I just going off my ball guide, I would have needed a touch of curl there. I would have needed, you know, half a ball's worth. But keeping in mind that the wind was pointed to the left, you probably saw me almost go an entire full ball outside the shot circle because I needed that little bit of extra, maybe 3/4, 4/5 of the ball was probably outside the shot circle to kind of counter that wind effect that was going to change my ball guide. So these are a variety of factors that you want to think of. You know, good luck with your Tour 11 play, guys. Wish you guys success. Hopefully you guys start honing in on these adjustments and can get through and play well in your Tour 11, and also always be thinking about these different win techniques and win scenarios. You want to always make sure that you're factoring in these overplays and or offset type methods. So good luck, and catch you guys next time.